Recording it, right?
This meeting is being recorded. Continue.
Hi, Bill.
Okay.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Here comes Stas.
Try that one. Yeah, turn it off. I'll just figure this one out. Hey, Bill.
Hey,
Stas, is Mike your brother?
Oh, can you hear me?
yep, we can hear you now.
All right.
Stas,
Hello.
is Mike your brother?
My little brother.
Yeah, he was a year behind me.
Okay.
Here comes Paul Banner.
So you're 71
Yes.
and he's 72. Okay.
Mhm.
I like the other one better. This side.
There's Paul.
Yes. I
Wasn't
gonna
expecting
show up
you tonight.
I wasn't expecting me tonight either, but had something come up. I'll fill you in and you get a few more people here.
Okay.
Hey, Bill, how do I show up on your screen? This is the first time I've done this from my iPhone.
Oh, I can see you.
Okay.
I assume everybody else can see you now too.
I can see him.
Mhm.
Hi, Frank.
Hello, Paul.
And Norb is just about online. Well, Paul, we got a great shot of your head and the vent above you.
Yeah, well, that's what it'll be for a while. I have to have a cameraman position the camera, so. And I don't know what the best way is to hold the camera when I'm in a Zoom call.
Oh,
That looks good.
there's Albert Wahmhoff.
We got Jim and we got Frank. We got Al. Norb is still working on it.
Is that Stas?
Yep.
Hi.
Hi.
What can I do for you?
And please turn that off. And I'm on a Zoom call with my college classmates from 1966.
Oh, cool.
Hey, Al?
Yeah.
Yep. I'm going to be blacked out here for a minute or two, and then you'll see me again.
Okay.
And I'll pick up.
What are we doing?
Okay, we're going to move me to bed. So I can set up the bed.
Okay.
Um,
Do you need to use the bathroom or anything first?
And there's Norb.
and
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you and we can see you.
Oh, great, great. It took me a while to get going on it. Did they change something in Zoom text? I mean, in Zoom, I tried to expand the video and it didn't work. I mean, the screen.
I don't know. Did anybody else run into any difficulty?
Grabbing titles, actually.
No,
So.
It worked. I got full screen.
And my wife's, when we ran a test, hers didn't show up in the gallery view until she had to go in there and make a little adjustment on the screen. Mike Donnelly is joining us, and Bill Gebhard and Frank Marfia. Galant. There's Frank. Dick. Bill.
Hello.
So. After I get on here. Do that.
Now can you hear me?
Break me card up, get set up together. And then, over the desk.
Al, your that's pretty much. Oh, there you go.
Are you there?
I'm ready if you're ready.
I hope I am.
Oh, it's good. You got it anyway.
It's different from the latest.
I think there's nothing wrong with it. Yeah. I feel like you should have
Bill?
Yeah,
Oh, I had a
I-
message. The host was not allowing us to unmute ourselves, but I guess you changed that because I just did.
Okay.
I didn't change anything that I know of.
Huh. Well, I wasn't able to unmute myself for a little while.
you don't set
Just thought you'd like to know.
Yeah, sometimes they do these. I don't know why, but
Yeah.
my original settings, somehow I have to go back and double check them every time just to make sure everything is working right.
That they didn't change something. I find that with Microsoft. They keep
Yeah.
changing things on me.
It's full size, right? You did it right. This right one?
Yes.
I'm not sure Paul knows he's online. We're getting a lot of background chatter from his end.
Is that where it's coming from?
I think so. It seems to light up when it
Oh,
goes.
I haven't seen anything. It's just a black blank.
Let's get
Oh.
you into
Something happened.
Yeah, well, when you hear the noise, it lights up.
I hear you. Thanks, Bill.
That brings up a point that my wife noticed when we were running our test, and that is that she had to go back and make sure that she was viewing the gallery rather than the speaker. So if you have the gallery on, you'll see the shots of all 11 of us now. But if you have the speaker, only the voice of the person who is got the loudest voice will command the attention of your system. Oh, there comes Mike Murphy.
Was Jim Yannick supposed to be on this call or planned to be on this call?
I haven't heard from him.
Okay.
It's not required.
Based
I
upon
think
some of
I've
the-
only seen him on maybe one or two of the Zooms in the last couple of years.
Right. He doesn't frequently attend.
Oh, look, you have some nice chips here.
Bill, based upon his comments that you forwarded, it sounds like he has kind of written us off as a waste of time.
You want this over your lap?
If we can do that, yes, but
Start off high,
okay,
bring it down low.
up just a little bit more. No, that's good.
Paul does not know he's on.
Oh, there we go.
There we
Okay.
go.
Oh, wow.
Oh, there he is. Yeah.
Is he all right?
Well, he is great. He has 3 new bypasses.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, my gosh.
And what?
3 new bypasses, he said.
Heart surgery?
Heart surgery.
Oh,
So,
So bring us up to date.
Yeah.
well, you guys know that periodically I said that my brain is slowing down. Okay, great, thanks.
Have a wonderful night, okay?
You too. Close the door, please.
It's a good thing we have wives that know what they're doing,
Right.
or grandkids.
I commented that it seems like my thought process says I've been slowing down. It's hard, stuff like that. And I had some discomfort with my heart pumping in heavy activity, and finally got it, did the heart cath, checking it out a week ago,
Whoa.
I think. Oh, maybe not. This is kind of backwards here. No, it was last week. So last week, Wednesday, we did the heart cath and determined that there was unusual, abnormal activity involving some of the arteries on the front of the heart, and that I was a good candidate for bypass surgery. And Friday, we did it. So I am in rehab at this point at Ascension Borges Kalamazoo. They have a rehab program they run on their 3rd floor, the south, I think it's the south section. So, basically we have that whole wing, 2 floors. And we're getting me straightened out, getting my strength built up, and anticipate going home sometime later next week. That's
Well, it's good to see you talking and alive.
Yeah.
Maybe not well yet, but getting there.
Well, it is dealing with the consequence of the surgery and so forth.
Sure.
So I have scabs over portions of my chest and have sores on legs where they had to pull two veins. They pulled the vein and didn't like the looks of it, so they went to the other leg and ended up with, very happy with what they got. When the surgeon talked to Sue after the surgery, he said this was a textbook surgery, just by the textbook. My heart, and it's just going, we've got a little healing time, but everything looks good.
Space.
That's great.
Yeah, it is great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I missed your name.
Thanks to God.
Who had bypass?
I did.
Paul Banner.
Paul Banner did. Paul Banner had.
Oh, okay. Thank you. My wife had
Paul, you
bypass
went
surgery.
to, Paul, you are in good hands. Gorgeous is an outstanding hospital.
I've been in their heart program since I discovered I needed a pacemaker to maintain or to avoid flatline conditions.
Right.
That was back in 1990. So I'm the rest of it is in much better shape than just a few days ago. They have the surgeon is a David Martin, and I hear he's real good. There was a scheduling conflict for the surgery they were going to have do, and David covered it. Guy with a lot of energy, a lot of excitement. When I was still in the prep area, but day of surgery, he walked by, and now I don't. Are any of you familiar with bypass surgery? They use the breathing devices. And they have another apparatus that looks kind of like a little green guppy that you blow. And the vibrations that those generate in your lungs help to clear out the moisture and stuff that tends to get stuck in the bottom of your lungs as you're inflating, getting the lungs fully inflated, so that they're fully functional. I don't know how long that process typically takes. I think it is more than a few days. We're doing well. I'm maintained as a critical case, but procedure, and good team. The rehab team is really pretty good, and they run this program a little bit on a shoestring, but when you come out of heart surgery, you're in critical shape, so you qualify for all kinds of insurance if they think you'll survive. But, at that point, then it depends on where you get bumped around on the Medicaid scale as far as the Medicaid or Medicare side of reimbursement goes. Now I've caught up with my thought process. So the team that is operating this, there is a doctor who, and I forget right now, I don't think the doctorate is specifically in medicine. I think it's more in counseling and and I'm blocking on the word there, but recovery, that type of thing. And then he's assisted by 1 or 2 nurses, a bunch of physical therapists, a bunch of occupational therapists, and they work a plan for each patient, and they develop that plan on a day-to-day basis. They meet every day and assess where they've come, how individual people are functioning, and next step type stuff. So I have 2 PT sessions in the morning, 2 OT sessions in the morning, and then 2 more of each in the afternoon, most times. They have psychological resources available, and I'm meeting with the psychiatrist tomorrow to see if there are diagnostic stuff that she may be able to add that would contribute to the other stuff. But this morning, I really hit kind of a low point. Was feeling depressed the way I feel depressed, but not nonviolent way. But the doctor said, "Well, we have psychiatric assistance." I said, "Yes, I know." And he said, would you like to take advantage of it?" I said, "Of course." So that starts tomorrow, I think. I meet with the psychiatrist tomorrow. So I'm a reincarnated 67-year-old.
Well, Paul, you probably aren't aware that I used to be affiliated with the cardiac surgery program at University of Michigan. And I'm really happy to hear about your outcome, and I want to stress the importance of the cardiac rehab that they've got you hooked into, because they really need to get your body working again. The psychiatry is really important too, because a lot of patients coming off of bypass surgery end up having things going on, either because of their being in the ICU or because of having bypass surgery. There are things that happen, and they don't automatically show up, but they may show up later. And so I think it's good to get a head start on it right now.
That, Stas, I will pass that along to the people I'm working with here. I am in here very much as a layperson, although I've been involved in a lot of stuff with various people and agencies, programs. And I'm the spouse of a teacher consultant for visually impaired kids. And her responsibilities included a lot of coordination for kids who needed support of one sort or another in specific support programs involving physical therapy or occupational therapy, crossovers between and so forth. So she has this perspective and is the daughter of a World War II Army nurse whose mom kicked the dad out for child abuse and raised her alone, well, with the help of grandma and great grandma. I have just great resources. Stas, I really appreciate that affirmation. And I will share that with people here. One of my missions as I'm going through this is to do what I can as a dumb patient who doesn't really want to cooperate, but I'm past that point. Anytime I need to get up and move someplace, I have a pager or a light that I have to get assistance. And the rule is, if you need this, you get the assistance. Do not attempt to relocate or anything of that nature without assistance, or you can get hurt. And it operates good.
Well, that's some hopeful news.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't want to, I sent out that last email. I had just some general thoughts about things that might be worth updating to the group. I was especially interested in what's been going on with people like Bill Gebhard and Stas, who have winter connections down in Florida. Sounded like, as I recall, Bill, you were over in the Bradenton area, weren't you?
That's correct. Yeah.
Does it exist anymore?
I'm happy to say yes. We still exist. We were on the edge of the cone. For a while, it looked like we were going to be in the center of the cone, but it kept dropping a little farther south. My neighbors reported that it got up to about 80 to 90 mile an hour winds there, and some carports were removed and things like that, but no other real serious damage. I didn't suffer much other than a couple of trees fruit trees that were bent over. So I consider myself extremely fortunate compared to those that are just a few miles south of me.
But you don't live there full time, do you, Bill?
No, that's just where I escaped winter. I'm down there from.
But I think Mulcahy is farther down, isn't he?
He might be. I don't know, but I know that I've got the ability to watch the local news from down there. And it's a lot more devastatingly picturesque in terms of what you see from some of the local stations that are down there showing it nonstop. So yeah, it's some of the places that I was, 8 months ago no longer exist.
That's
Stas,
strange.
what about you?
We are in what they call Indian Rocks Beach.
Know exactly where you are.
Pardon me?
I know exactly where you are.
Okay. Now, some people say it was spared because of the Indian burial grounds. Who knows? We're about 4.5, 5 miles south of Clearwater Beach. So we're right on the Gulf. And all they had was some rain and some wind. That's all. Nothing, no flooding. We haven't heard anything about the place we stay. We go for the month of March. So we leave the last week of February, actually go a couple days on the Atlantic side and then come across. So we haven't heard anything from the landlord but friends that are down there inland just about a mile or so just said wind and some rain, but no flooding. Now, Chris, I think, is farther south than Bradenton. I don't know if he's in Naples or Fort Myers.
If it's
I
Fort
thought,
Myers, Fort Myers is the one that got
Yeah, they
absolutely
got hit hard.
dead center hit. It is undescribable.
Is Chris in there year round, or is that a winter deal for him? Does anybody know?
I got the impression that he was living down there year round. And for some reason, I associated him with the Boca Raton area over on the other side of the peninsula. But I may be wrong on that.
Well, that's kind of where we go for a couple nights, just immediately south of Boca Raton, what they call Deerfield Beach. And that's about 19 miles north of Lauderdale. So I don't think they got hit hard at all.
My
But I
brother
think
lives in
he's on the Gulf.
Sarasota, and he was without electricity for a few days, but said there were a few trees down, but not much else where.
Who was that?
My brother.
Mike,
Yeah.
Mike,
Yep.
or Pat?
My brother Patrick. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh.
okay.
And he said he lives like 2 blocks in from the coast. So he was very fortunate.
Yeah.
Did you say Sarasota?
Yeah. We enjoy going to Siesta Key there, but I'm not sure how much of that is left.
All those barrier islands with the storm surge, they really took it.
Yeah.
Now, is the term barrier islands, is that, I get the impression that means they're offshore somewhere and supposedly serve as a barrier to incoming water and storms, or how does that work?
Yeah, there's a little waterway between the coast and the barrier island. I don't know how big a vessel you could put through there. Personal sailboats and power boats, yeah, but nothing big commercially. But they're connected typically by a bridge to the mainland, except for Sanibel Island right now.
Some of those barrier islands are less than 100 yards wide. I mean, so it can be in places. So you get a 9-foot storm surge, it's inundated.
Yeah, the whole island. I read somewhere that some of those islands are only 10 foot above sea level, 10 or 15 feet at maximum.
It wouldn't surprise me if they were even lower than that because of just some of the the
Wow.
terrain down there. Florida's not known for it as a mountainous state.
No.
They're pretty flat.
Well, actually, from what I understand is the majority of Florida state is, if the water were to go up like 25 feet, all you'd have left is the northern side of Florida. It's not that high down there at all.
Yeah.
I had a niece who relocated from Tampa with her husband and 3 children. They stayed in a hotel in Orlando, and they did well. I mean, the hotel had power and food for all the residents. One of those Orlando hotels that supports all that entertainment industry.
What's ironic is that Orlando got hit harder than Tampa did.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. But they got a lot of water and a lot of wind, right?
Mhm.
In this whole process, I don't understand how they deal with so many elderly people living in retirement facilities or nursing homes or whatever you want to call them, and people in hospitals that had to be transferred to other hospitals. Now, and again, maybe, Bill, you as involved in transportation of people, how in the heck do they get so many people relocated so quickly? I mean, does anybody have any clue?
It's all done with ambulances and helicopters, getting them out of there. And if they're able to sit up, they'll put them in wheelchair vehicles and just start moving them out. Hopefully they can find someplace that will be able to accommodate.
And they have
The
room.
numbers are just gigantic though for that widest swath of storm.
I was thinking of people who are on dialysis.
Mhm.
What becomes of them? I don't understand how emergency facilities deal with people like that. Looking for some input. I don't know.
They down there, they develop their own disaster plans, most of those places, on how they're going to handle it. It's not like it's 100-year, once in 100-year type of storm. This is something that they've gotten used to, and they've developed protocols for handling it. And
Maybe to get their license, they have to have that,
Sure.
for disasters.
mhm. It's not a pretty situation. And that's why we may find that the death toll will
Right.
continue to rise as things go along, that it may be attributable to the storm just because they weren't able to get all of the emergency help that they needed.
On that cheery note,
And it's also a good idea to hope that we don't get any bad storms up here, because we don't have any electrical crews left up here to help take care of them, because they're
That's
all
true.
down in Florida.
Right, that's true.
now another logistic question, when you talk about the electrical crews, I saw those videos of all those trucks lined up in like big fields or whatever. Where do those people stay when they're down there? And I saw a thing, they were doing some reports locally about volunteers from Red Cross going down there. But where do they put these people up when they're coming, so many people from outside the region? Any clues?
Well, I don't think right now people are going to Orlando for much entertainment. Maybe, did it reopen at all? Anybody know if all those amusement parks reopened? So I think a lot of the hotels in some of the areas that survived without too much damage are the places where these visitors that are working are staying.
I know that during Katrina, we sent a number of ambulances from Michigan down to
Down to
New Orleans.
Yeah.
And crews ended up just sleeping in the vehicles.
No.
Yeah, that would make sense. You know, on a different note, but Bill, but talking about disasters, it's interesting that I basically am a glorified usher. They gave me another name, but at the University of Michigan for a football game. And we have like training sessions on how to help the crowd get out of the stadium. And a big deal is if there's a lightning storm. Pray the Lord they don't have a shooting incident. But I do know I took sharpshooters up on the elevator and they sat in the top of the on both sides of the stadium with, you know, big scopes and everything, just to make sure people are safe that way. But as an answer there, it's amazing how, and they go over that like every year for all the football games and some of the other sporting events that are in venues that are fairly large, of where you should tell people to go. I think it's a good question because the logistics on that are just incredible.
Bill, correct me if the storms are so vicarious as to which direction they're going to break and so forth, and what areas are going to get dumped on, and what areas don't get dumped. That the coordination for this stuff kind of takes place at the local in comparing it to Michigan, it would be the sheriff departments, the larger police departments would coordinate emergency response
I'll be back.
back and forth, so that the overall effect is that you can concentrate the resources you need in the areas that need them a little bit more efficiently than if they created a master disaster plan that you updated every 20 years, always 10 years out of date as far as revision, and probably 15 years out of date as far as data that it's based on.
Right, I would think so.
Yeah, and down in Florida, sheriff's departments have a lot more, or I don't want to say power, but they're a lot more prevalent in the day-to-day activities. You see that it's sheriff's patrols that you see all over the place. There aren't that many city patrol. Well, some of the big cities have them, but sheriff's departments are the primary law enforcement and civil defense coordinating agencies down there. So more so than here in Michigan.
Are ambulance services predominantly privately operated, or are they operated local municipal level?
Primarily through fire departments down there.
Which again is tying back into the emergency responders who are covering for each other because that's the environment you're in.
Mm-hmm. There's a whole lot of mutual aid agreements down there.
When I worked at the University of Michigan, we had annual disaster drills, fire and quarterly fire drills and so on. And that was an attempt to keep things current rather than the every 10 years that Paul was talking about. But mass casualty events usually were in the range of 25 to 50 people for drill purposes, but nothing like what they're having to deal with in Florida with, relocating thousands and thousands of people.
We lost Norb, didn't we? Looks like Norb.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little while ago.
And we were going to talk a little bit about his rebuttal, which I thought was well written. I liked it, his rebuttal a lot of our friend Jim Hannock's comments.
Well, just a little bit of background there. I got a message from Jim Hannock that he had several articles that he wanted me to share with the alumni. And what I have done in the past is if it's on a topic that has been discussed or is of real interest to others in the alumni, among the alumni, I'll go ahead and post it, even though I may not personally subscribe to or understand what it is that he has been saying. And so all I did was post the links to a couple of articles that he mentioned and suggested that people who wanted to discuss it further with him should do so by email, unless there was, I got the message from Norb that he had been in touch with Jim Hannock, and Norb asked me to post the conversation on the website and the updates. So that's how it all came into being. I have to say that with some of the things that Jim sent me several months back when he was a candidate for governor were pretty obviously, his personal political situation, and so I didn't feel that that it was something that should be shared through our vehicle, and I suggested that he might want to contact individual members by email rather than relying on me to serve as the conduit. And that was the same once before. I forget exactly what the context was. Somebody in the alumni group raised a real stink with me for publishing comment that, and I can't even remember who it was that started it, but basically I said, this is a forum that is open really basically to most people on most topics. And so I use a little bit of editorial discretion in there. So that's how that whole thing came about.
Bill, you sent that, I think one of the ones I saw with articles on it.
Right.
And the second one, the lower one, there were two was an article that was actually in the New York Times book review, or the New York Times magazine, weekly magazine.
Right.
Father Tim or something
Right.
like that. I'm not sure, but he was a radio priest at a college, I think, and he was, I don't know. Anyways,
I think he has a podcast.
That's it. But it was I think he was at a college because he was raising money for a Newman Center. I can't remember where, but anyways, I thought that was interesting that he was giving his responses to some of the questions in the article that you gave us. I mean, somehow I saw that, but then it was in the New York Times. So I thought, whoa, that's pretty big. So,
Yeah, I published that one in particular because I forget who it was that was in one of our earlier Zoom meetings. Just can't think of his name. Maybe some of you guys can recall. Somebody mentioned his podcast. So it's like, oh, here's a interesting little bit of
okay.
follow up to conversation that we had as a group. So,
Kind of on a different note, in talking about disasters, my younger brother was in the middle of 9/11, literally. And a question I asked of him was, how did you know what to do? And he was across the street from one of the towers. And he said that the office manager, a lady, said, leave. That's all she said. I got the impression that's all she had to say. However, they had drills about this. Because if you recall, prior to what happened in 9/11, there were some
Here's Tower.
groups that were caught on elevators or something, and I think it kind of got them all thinking about that. But anyways, everybody just left. Nothing said. It seems of it, but he's not spoken of it. The biggest disaster was because he lives in New Jersey, getting on one of the boats that are like a shuttle between New York City and Poughkeepsie or whatever it is, the other dock. That sounded like a real disaster, but he more or less survived unscathed with that. He did say that, interestingly, he knew of someone whose daughter got in a cab, and she was going to the World Trade Center, and and the cab driver, who was Arab apparently, told her not to go there prior to when the actual event happened. So she got interviewed by the FBI after that found out. She had no knowledge, but I thought it was interesting that people knew that was going to happen before the whole thing did happen.
one of when I was working at Operation Able, one of our board members, who at that time was in charge of economic planning for Ford Motor. She was in New York on that date in the hotel across from, not in one of the main towers, but in that plaza.
Howdy.
Remember me?
I think so. Excuse me just a minute. I'm going to do some figure out how to silence this. Can you still hear me, Bill?
Yes.
Okay.
I was just looking at mine to see if I can.
I'm getting my night meds.
Oh,
So you get to look at my tray table up close.
as long as you're not taking anything in the rear end, that's.
Just remember, Paul, this is being recorded.
Let's just take a look at your incisions here again. Oh, those all look real good.
Don't they?
They do. Perfect. Perfect. You got a couple down on your knees, right? Those all scabbed over and looking good.
I think they're scabbed over and looking good, but they don't look good to me.
Well, just gonna will these fit up fine enough?
I think so. You're above, you're
Yep.
at me now.
Yep. Saw that
Nice.
one. You got one more.
Bill, how well do you know how to edit these recordings?
Yes, I saw it. Okay, so his Paul's volume.
Oh, yeah, he's been muted. Paul's been muted.
Yeah, I got
Yeah,
him now.
I figured out how to do it. I've never had to mute anybody before. But I was talking about this, one of our board members who was in the plaza there in one of the hotels. She said she was coming down the elevator when all of that happened, and she's never really said anything at all about anything afterwards. She just, never went on with any other conversation regarding to her personal experiences. That's the closest that I had ever come to having anybody there at the towers.
One of the things that my brother said is that the women took off their shoes and they started running, and they ran about a mile, and then they shooed because they had high heels or whatever, because no one knew what was happening, but the shoe dealers were giving them shoes to wear after about a mile from where they ran, or a ways from where they ran. The other thing, kind of grim, was talking about an elevator. Apparently there were 2 guys and 2 women on an elevator, and the elevator got hit and it just dropped. And then it left an opening in the elevator itself. And the women got out and the guys didn't, because they were too wide.
You mean it hit the floor, the ground floor?
Yeah, exactly, Stas.
Ooh.
Wow.
What a tragic way to.
My brother was stationed in the Pentagon on 9/11,
Wow.
and fortunately he was on the other side of the building, but he was part of the medical team there. He's a periodontist, and he was working in the inner courtyard to assist burn victims and administer IVs and things. And when he retired, he said it was the proudest day of his career, but it was the worst day of his career. He was proud because he was able to utilize all the training he had received his entire career, but it was sad because essentially we're attacked on American soil.
Right.
Well, on a little happier, less tragic note, one of the things I did in the last couple of days was I got in touch with the guy at Dwelling Place of Grand Rapids. They're the nonprofit that is trying to develop the housing in what was the old athletic field. And I was especially interested because the last we had ever heard from them was back in September of 2021. And excuse me, I attempted several times to get in touch with people there to see what was going on. And some people in the organization weren't aware of it. So I finally got in touch with the guy, and he said they're waiting to hear from the Michigan State Housing Development Authority on a major grant, which they expect to hear almost any time now. And once that funding is in place, he said they will be breaking ground and going into the infrastructure development sometime in the winter months. Another guy that I had been dealing with at Samaritan said that what dwelling place is, the challenge for dwelling place is coming up with different streams of funding that will enable it to build the housing at lower cost than marketplace. Because, I mean, their whole mission is to offer housing at lower than marketplace prices for income qualified individuals. So that's where that stands right now. So people like, I don't know, Jim, you physically live over in that area? Jim Blanchard?
I live in the greater Grand Rapids area. I don't live real close to there, but
Oh, okay. It was, I'm losing track of who it was that lives right there. Pete Garthy used to live there. Well, anyway, just if you're over in that area, just kind of keep an eye out for any signs of construction. Now, the other piece, the Bethany Christian Services, they're the ones that took over St. Henry's Hall and have been using that and the old convent. The convent is used for administrative offices, and St. Henry's Hall was being used for a combination of classrooms and living accommodations. Their plan was to expand the St. Henry's Hall so that it joins up with the old convent. And so I tried to get in touch with the person that I dealt with a couple years back about what their progress is and whether that's tied in with anything having to do with the funding from MISHTA, the Housing Development Authority. So I waiting to get back for her to get back in touch with me. But my hunch is that it's probably the case that a big chunk of the funding for their additional space, which they described as dorms and classrooms. I'm just guessing here that it would also come through the Michigan Housing Development Authority. So waiting to hear from that. So it's sort of coming along. It's like I would suspect that given the inflation and the issue with finding skilled labor these days, everything has gone up substantially since they came up with that plan. That was about 18, 20 months ago now. So anyway, that's what I've been able to find out. So if you happen to be over in that area and okay, I see Paul's back on, so I'm going to see if I can unmute him. I guess I can't. I can only say ask him to unmute.
I got it.
Okay, he's back.
I'm glad you successfully muted me because the conversation might have been a little distracting. It was all legit.
So that's where things stand with that property. I may have mentioned this once before. Samaritan and Bethany don't actually own the grounds, the physical property and the buildings. That's owned by a development company called Pinnacle. And they have a division in there that handles construction as well. So Pinnacle Construction actually did the work on at least the main buildings over there that Samaritan is. I'm just guessing there must be some sort of leasing arrangement with them. So Pinnacle is again the one that has to go through all of the processes to get the funding in place, or it's part of getting the funding in place for that last chunk of property. So if I find out anything more, I may post a note on the website or in one of our e-newsletters. So that's what I have found in the last couple of weeks. The only other thing that personally I'd like to get some discussion among you guys is I'm looking for ways to improve the Zoom sessions. The last one that we had before this one, I don't know, we had 4 or 5 guys involved in it. And so I started my little gray cells working on what can we do to make it more relevant to more people. And Norb brought this up too in our discussion with him one time, that it seems like it's pretty much in the last few times out that it's pretty much been, I don't want to say dominated, but most of the participants have been the class of 66. Now I see Frank Unger is 65. And Dick Galant is 65. Mike Donnelly is, what did you say? 71?
67.
67.
Yeah.
And Jim Blanchard is 71. So we got it's like those big in between. The other people from the 60s have just sort of not, haven't, I don't know whether it's what we're talking about or whatever. One idea that I had was that we rotate the chair or the host of the meeting, so that I guess I don't want it to be a Bill Yagerlener in control. He's the guy that runs all of these things. I'd like to get some other people involved as the chair of the host of each session. And I'm perfectly willing to go. I mean, I have a private account that I use with Zoom to set up the meetings, and I have a subscription that allows me to record each session, and I'm perfectly willing to go ahead with doing that. But I guess I would like to see some other guys kind of step forward and see if they can offer any other insight or leadership in this whole thing. So I'll kind of throw it open to discussion to see if there's anything we can come up with.
Well, Bill, I was thinking that, the setup we have now is good. The fact that you would host the meeting, you could still do that. It just seems if we carry different topics or something, that each one of us could pick a meeting that we would be the chairman of or the host for. I mean, the mechanics would stay the same.
Right.
But visually and every other way, there's really no difference. There would be a leader for each meeting. So it's just a matter of just deciding how to do it. I don't think it's really terribly complicated. But I also don't know exactly how we can get more people involved either, There's usually a core group, in any organization. And that's all I got to say.
Bill,
Yeah.
have a Norb is off.
Right.
Offline. Why don't you have, and maybe you've already chewed the cud on this so bad that there's no tobacco left. But get into a good chat with Norb about how his class got together every year. There were a few people who had the resources that they had, lake property or something else of a nature that was a place that people were comfortable to with getting together. The reason they were getting together was to see each other, not to not I I don't know. Excuse my cough, that's just healthy. It hurts. But I've mentioned before that our freshman year, the senior class had I block on names here sometimes, had Robert Tisch in that class. I think one of the Mollies might have been in that class. Paul Kress was in that class. No, there were a bunch of kind of high profile people that were maybe were stronger leaders for the whole student body during their last year at St. Joe. And as they moved on, they kept contact, and they kept track of who was doing what. If there was a death, it got spread around. A whole bunch of people would show up at the wake, and so on. And see if chatting with Norb, you can get some stories going about some of those get-togethers, and maybe that would provide some inspiration to move in different directions from what we're doing now.
Bill, just a couple thoughts. First of all, when I took a sociology class at Michigan, and one of the things that I did is actually write about your class. And kind of what I did with it was I made a comparison between our class, which seemed like, by the way, Frank and I are the only two surviving, literally, people of our class. But I made a comparison of my thoughts of how I perceived your spirit. I guess, I don't know what like based on what my experience was versus yours because of what the topic was. It was just my perception of seeing how you still stay together and how you interact. And Norb's class had Bob Lazinski, who I think Dave Hooper can attest to, where he's still alive. You would have some interesting Zoom sessions. He was, in a sense, he was a character, but he was kind of had a charismatic personality. He had so much enthusiasm in that whole class. I remember because he was, I think, fifth year when I was a first year, and they just had a spirit. Not making excuses. I think Dave Hooper's class had, take this in the right way, had some characters in there. They were good people that were kind of, had leadership skills in that. Ours did not. It was really, I think, gutted by what happened with the separation of about 10 people leaving after our first year and going to Saginaw. I don't think that had helped bring a collegial kind of spirit, where your class I think had that. This is based on my perception. I've never really discussed that. I mean, because I kind of felt alone from my own experience on this. And, you know, the people that you were, in a sense, I was kind of envious of it because it, you know, like Frank and I really didn't have a lot.
No.
So, you know, it was kind of, I'm just giving you what my, you know, going, you know, kind of interacting with you for 5 years is pretty intense. And anyways, it you know, your comment about how your class dominates and that, I don't have any problem with that. I just want to be, or any of the others, I just want to be a part of yours. So that's just a comment in that sense. One idea, I don't know, is something I enjoy is, I know Stas brought this up when found out that he was in the service in the Black Sea, Stas, and
Yeah, Trebizond.
yeah, and people's travels and things that they've seen is always interesting to me, and what I learned by places that I've been, other than you know, being in Michigan or so. I mean, Frank grew up in Chicago apparently, or after he left the seminary, did a lot of work there.
Right.
And I just that just intrigues me. The only other thing that I can say to reinforce that is that the Greeks always said that the best way to write a story is write about a journey, and think about the Iliad and the Odyssey. So there might be some truth in that. Just some, you know, things that you kind of interact with and identify with. I do get to see Mike Donnelly probably almost every day. Lucky in that. So I miss you know, seeing others like you that you're here today.
Right back at you, Bill. Or Dick.
Say again.
Right back at you.
So you know, just that, you know, just as a theme or something like that.
Bill, just to follow up on those comments, your class, as you left, my class started, because I started in September of '67. So
Yeah.
I just missed your class, but your cohesiveness of your class and getting together with Zoom sessions was actually inspiration for us. And so our class is starting to do that now. And I think as Dick said, it's nice to see each other. You may not discuss anything substantive, but just to see each other and catch up on a few little tidbits makes it all worthwhile, because there's, if the seminary did anything, it created a strong bond amongst the students. And that bond still exists even today. So this is a great forum for maintaining that bond of friendship.
Now you're having a reunion, right?
We are. It's just, it's a small reunion. It's just the class of 70, 71, and 72. So we'll report back next time how that went.
I did notice in the last couple of weeks that there were, I think, maybe 3 guys who came. Looks like they were in the 70s who signed up for the e-news things. So I'm guessing that must be guys that are in your class or in that group, Jim. Now, refresh me, what year did you actually start? What was your first year at the seminary?
It was September 1967.
Okay. And you would have been a freshman at that time, is that?
That's correct.
And how long did you remain at the seminary?
I did 4 years at St. Joe's, graduated from St. Joe's, did 2 years at Christopher House, And then I did 1 year at St. Mary's down in Houston. That's a major seminary down there. And then I dropped out of the program.
You went to Houston, not San Antonio?
Yeah, it was Houston.
Oh. Frank, is St. Mary's also in San Antonio?
Yeah, St. Mary's, well, that was the
I mean, the
Assumption,
name.
Assumption Seminary was this name of the seminary.
Oh, okay.
St. Mary's University is the school we took most of our classes at. It was a couple miles from this, from the seminary.
It was interesting because in Baltimore, we went to St. Mary's too.
Mhm.
But was that the name of the seminary?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was.
It was the original seminary in the United States. It was kind of interesting.
So ours in San Antonio was called Assumption Seminary, and we had housing there.
Okay.
And then and every morning a bus came up to after breakfast and took us, and those who wanted to go had classes at St. Mary's University. We could spend as long as we wanted. It was only a 2-mile walk. Some people walked home.
Oh,
Wasn't the seminary in Cincinnati also St. Mary's?
yes, I believe so.
Could have been.
But the St. Mary's, and Paul can attest to this, was well, I always say I was kind of proud because we lived right down the street. I love baseball from where Babe Ruth's house was. Current day, it's where right down, not too far from Orioles ballpark and the Ravens stadium. On a Catholic note, or more than that note, they had a prayer hall, they called it. And the priests that taught were Sulpician priests. And the order was started in France, in Paris, France. There's they were named after the surplice of St. Michael's. There's a Saint Sulpice church. And if you saw the Da Vinci Code, where they had that, where there was not the monk, but there was a nun or something was by the chapel, and they had that rush going through there, that scene. That was the church itself. When I went there, I wanted to see it. It was kind of sad. They had a funeral there. It was a funeral for a French soldier that had passed. But getting back, the reason with the priests, the Sulpicians that taught there, we went to a prayer hall and prayed there. In a prayer hall, we said our morning prayers and our night prayers. And the reason was that there was a heresy in 1840s or something, and the seminary had started in 1795. But anyways, this Jansenism somehow, which was called, they said that the only time that you should be in church was when you had mass. Otherwise, you worshiped outside. I don't know all the ramifications. At least that's what we were told. But that was this prayer hall was where the bishops and that met in the 1850s to write the Baltimore Catechism in that room. And the thing that I was kind of interested in it was that because of the era of when it was built and everything, it was when you went to Freedom Hall, you looked in the way the doors were, the interior, how of the building itself, it was as if there was nothing different about it. You were living in history, that's my point. And there was a house literally right next to this, to the seminary, that was where Mother Seed stayed for a year when she was in transition from being a layperson into her order and went into her ministry. And then every room had a statue of the Blessed Virgin Mary, and it was called the Sede Sapientiae, seat of wisdom. And then on the outside door, they had, if you ever been to Williamsburg, and they have that kind of fancy writing on the outside, where they had the same thing on all the doors, that, you know, the living quarters and everything, that had that same kind of pattern, but that was the Seita Sapientia, seat of wisdom insignia on it. It was just filled with so much. And then the French order, they even had a cemetery on the grounds where the priests that had taught there, when if they passed, they buried them at in that cemetery right on the grounds. It was like a compound, and it was just interesting to live in that environment in downtown Baltimore. About 5 years back, I went back to, I walked back to it. I've been by it a couple other times too, but the physical building itself, I think, was raised. The Diocese of Baltimore still owns the seminary property, and the chapel there, which was what was it called? Our Lady of Clairvaux, which everybody called Miss Clairol, but that was that's a national monument. So that chapel, or national historical building, that chapel still exists. It's still on the grounds, and the rest of it, I have some pictures, is kind of like a park. So like right behind us is close to where Edgar Allan Poe lived. Just a lot of historical things about it. It was just interesting.
I can add a little footnote to that. A great uncle of mine was rector of that seminary.
Wow.
Ooh.
Long before my time. I don't know how many greats are in his relationship to me, but I do remember going there once as a child with my parents, but it wasn't enough to make me want to stick around in the seminary so I could go to.
Could you say that again? I missed that.
Oh, a great whatever uncle of mine was the rector of St. Mary's Seminary in Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
I went there as a child, but I don't think we ever went in the doors.
Before I forget, one of the previous updates that I sent out had that thing in Greek. Now, how many people saw that and instantly recognized what it was without looking at the link?
Menina Ida Thea.
Eleado Akileos.
It's the first line of the
Iliad.
Iliad.
It says basically,
Yeah.
it means that Achilles was mad. Yeah. Achilles was mad, basically.
Yeah.
Mania, that he was mad.
This is
And,
how Achilles got mad. Yeah.
well, he was mad because Agamemnon took his cortisone there, or liaison person. That's what the whole. But one thing that I learned about that when you read the first lines of any classics, it kind of sets the theme for the whole poem.
Mm-hmm.
Because it and how adept that was, and how they did it. What, in 6 words or so?
I don't even remember what arma verumque cano means today. It's something I sing.
Arms in the
Yeah,
man
I
I
sing
sing.
of arms and men. That was the opening line of the Aeneid.
Yeah.
Well, some of that
It's the
stuff
same
sticks in your
idea.
brain, but you don't use it for 40 years, 50 years,
Yeah.
except in crossword puzzles, maybe.
Yeah.
Like I said, I happened to spot an ad that showed up on Facebook, and I said, "What is that?" And that intrigued me, and I clicked on the link, and it went over to. I don't know if you followed through on that. It was like a 4-part course or something like that online for $350 or $450 to discuss to discuss that poem, I thought, well, my gosh, that was kind of, it got me to thinking though, and this is where people like Jim Blanchard might come in. At what point did they no longer teach Greek at the seminary? Does anybody know? Did you have any classes in it?
I did not. Greek was optional when I was there, and I had 2 or 3 classmates that took, I think, 1 class in Greek. So some of the older classes may have had a little bit more exposure to Greek, but I don't think, I think that a lot of the Greek kind of went away about the time when I started, which would have been when you had just left.
Yeah, Jim,
Interesting. I
you
mean,
know,
I would have thought
the guys
that,
had,
I would have thought that part of being a priest was to be able to read the scriptures in the original so that you could get what was there. I find it odd that the church would have dropped that.
well, actually, what you say is very true, but it just, you know, and that's also because those were the languages of the day when they did that, just like Latin was the language of the day, the universal. But I mean, you know, in the middle 1950s, that wasn't true anymore. And like me, for Greek, I found it was interesting because you could tear something apart, put it back together again, and translate it and everything. But other than that, and I wasn't terrible at it either, it was not anything more than an academic exercise, to be honest with you.
Dave, do you like it?
I found it helpful at one point when Jehovah's Witnesses came to my door. Because they had their own version of the beginning of John's gospel, and I could say, no, that's not what the Greek says.
I found that I'm talking in generalities here, that the education that we received at St. Joe's was, I'll put it this way, was so superior that a lot of the younger priests that I've listened to sermons on, what, you know, about, or where they've given sermons, the background, not that they're bad, but they don't get the depth. When you talked about, you know, knowing Greek and that, they don't get the depth of some of the things that they talk about. If they're talking about the gospel and that, sometimes they kind of they kind of touch the point, but they don't get to the total point of things. I don't know if that makes sense, but that at least I've noticed it, and I've listened to a lot of sermons. Now, if the older priests still seem to have that background, where the younger priests don't seem to have it. The point is that having Latin and Greek, like St. Joe's taught, was an incredible asset, I think.
Somebody,
Another thing is, it was one of the craziest things that happened to me was I took an English class at Michigan because I had to get enough credits for the degree. And throughout the time I was at St. Joe's, Father Zaskowski, anything I wrote, I tried this and that. He always gave me an 88. I just knocked my head against the wall trying to bust it to get a 90. And so I go to Michigan, and the first paper they give back to me, I get an A. I almost fell out of my chair. Yeah. But I was, I'm not saying that the priests, I understand now better why they gave me 88s. But it was interesting anyway. I mean, the knowing grammar and syntax makes a big difference. And as you go on, it doesn't matter whether you're in doing English or all the humanities and stuff. If you get a liberal arts degree in a college, that background is incredible.
Now, somebody over the last couple of years in our discussions pointed out the similarity between our experience at the seminary and the British boarding school concept
Right.
of the classics.
Right.
And I got to wondering, was our experience in just the scholarly part, was that pretty much the way all seminaries all over the world were operating? I don't know.
I think that St. Joe's was also, my feeling was a little bit of old school, but I mean the curriculum was set in like what, the 1480s or something, whenever the Council of Trent met after the Reformation, because
1550, 15, yeah, about there, yeah.
Yeah.
Just after
thanks,
Luther.
Mike. I don't, but I mean, they sent, and I think St. Joe's was still using that curriculum.
Bill? David Hooper here. You see me?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
We can see and hear you. You're one of the old timers.
No,
That's my point.
Gee.
Oh, really old timers.
A couple of consequences of that. First of all, the questions that several of you have was, what was it like when they did such and such? And those when they did such and such were the years that I was there having the such and such done to me. So like getting a prior dosage of what you got, which is a slightly different perspective, but that isn't even really what I'm thinking. What I'm thinking is that one of the stronger points of a group like this is that it focuses a lot on what did you gain in your seminary years and what did you do with it afterwards? How did it help or hurt you in your profession, in your field, in your relation to other people, especially on the educational level? The only group we're lacking here to tell us what they did with their theological exhortation professionally is the ones who remained ordained priests, who after all were the ones that the education was gauged for. So my question is there a way, or is there a desire, first of all, if we're looking for not just good discussions and good topics, but interesting people, which is somewhat, I think, the way my life has bounced around from one interesting person or situation to the next, not just the group of. What about if we ever included once in a while someone who had spent their life and still is a graduate of St. Joe's as an ordained priest, and what his life was like, and what the
That's an excellent idea.
of being good in Greek was, if you were a priest in the 1990s. We don't have that perspective. And I have loved this perspective. And it only just occurred to me as we're talking before that seminary was set up to turn out people who have their lives to be priests.
Not turn
And
away.
they're the group that we don't find a way to get in. And I don't think that would be that hard to do, because I don't think we need to fill a screen with them. We just need to pull in a person or two, even if it's for an invitation of 1 or 2 times. If we're looking for topics, not members, we're looking for occasional participants not just every month faithful. There are people around named Terry Stewart, Don Haydens, Bob Flickinger, Michael Hazard, Charles Fisher, even Hooper spent 18 years, as a priest, which was a whole different experience than if I had been out of the priesthood. Well, it was a whole different period than what it was after I was out of the priesthood. So maybe there's not just the age or the class. Maybe it isn't just what was our class like or what was the other class like, but who else took a St. Joe's education and made a profession out of it? Especially the ones that are priests that we already know. So we can sort out the guys that we wouldn't want to hear from anyway, from the ones that just might have something interesting to toss into that. Any one or combination of those two, I would think, could provide the spark for a good meeting and a good discussion, even if we're just one meeting. So just another place to draw people or topics with our experience and how it's affected their lives. Because I'm thinking, as the old guy, I'm the only one here, I think, who can say that when I entered St. Joe's, the reigning Pope was Pius XII. Pius XII.
You're old.
Yeah, you guys are thinking, oh, John the 23rd was there. Well, Pius XII died the month after I entered the seminary, and I maintained that there was no cause and effect connection between those two factors. But factually, he was Pope in September when I entered. He died in October. So my whole seminary career was under the papacy of John the 23rd, which was a fascinating experience because the church went from Pius XII to Paul VI during the 6 years that we, in some ways, and I, for the entirety, were there. That was a unique time of transition in the church's history. And then, most who continued as priests, it was Paul VI and the flourishing of the council. Everyone was excited about it. Everyone was looking for ways to implement the new ways of doing it. The major obstacles or resistances hadn't surfaced yet. It was a fascinating era to be part of. And then the guys like Fisher and Hazard and them that have gone the whole, wow, they started with, Pius XII and were educated at St. Joe's during John the 23rd and served as priests, beginning with Paul VI, and then moved on to John Paul I and II, and then Benedict. That's really quite an era and of different papacies in which to take the St. Joe's education and how to try to apply it to effective priestly ministry during that range of church history. And I think those kinds of resources are around if we're interested in having them.
Yeah.
I think one challenge is that most of those guys are busy doing other things in ministry.
They're doing other things on weekends in parishes mostly. I don't know that they're all busy on Monday nights. Yeah, but they are doing other things, but they're doing it freely and they have control of their own time.
They're all
All the people
retired,
that-
aren't they? Dave, are they all retired?
Yeah,
Yes,
most of them still live around the area.
Well, does
Well,
Mike and Charles live in
Don-
Kalamazoo? Do
Pardon?
they live in Kalamazoo?
That's still in the neighborhood. Yeah.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know.
Yeah. Well, Stuart Hayden's.
Chuck Fisher.
Well, only one of our classmates.
Grand Rapids priests. Hazard, Fisher, our Kalamazoo priests. Flickinger's a diocesan priest with missionary experience thrown in to the middle of that. And my years were in the Lansing diocese, so it's all Southeast Michigan. And I don't even know about those who might be headed Alpena way or Gaylord.
Marvin knows somebody.
Guys like Derillo, or I mean, who I don't know.
Garillo's still alive?
No,
He's living and who isn't. I'm just thinking of the people at the class ahead of me, all the ones we talk about being in the Mikado.
Well, also, Paul Thiefels lives in Ann Arbor.
Yeah.
He was ahead of you by 1 year.
Right.
Haven't seen him for a while, but he lives in Ann Arbor.
Right.
Well, Dick Host
Stewart
was
had a
known-
terrific profile because of his closeness to Bishop Rose.
Yeah.
He would have a unique journey through
Right.
the ministry because of that.
Dick Host has been on our group a couple times, right? But not recently, not maybe in over a year. He's the only member of our class who's still a priest or retired now. But
Yeah.
the other person, Mike McKenna, is in an institution, right? Is he in a nursing home?
I think that's correct.
So, I mean, we only had two of our members who made it through. the
Yeah.
seminary.
And because it was changing that. I mean, that's 7 of my classmates, and I'm 5 years older than you are, you know. It was actually probably a diminishing percentage that remained in active ministry as the years went on. Whereas the larger block of the normal thing was to remain a priest. And a few guys left after leaving St. Joe's. And that began to change. So just a bunch of other people that are from the same roots as we are. If they have anything to contribute as we're looking for new ways to use this established format for our own enrichment and that of others as well, perhaps. I rest my case.
Good points. On that note, I've got to leave. I'm hungry and I haven't had my dinner yet. Sorry. I'll watch the rest of it on the, it's being recorded, right, Bill?
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, I really do enjoy these meetings. I'm a Johnny come lately to a lot of you. I mean, we were classmates for about 6 years, but then I lost track of you for about 40 years. Through mostly my own fault. I mean, I was living in another state and vacationing in a third state and hardly ever got back to Michigan. So this is a way of reconnecting with all you guys. I'm looking forward to another dinner. I don't have anything planned. Another gathering, maybe in Grand Rapids or somewhere in Southwest Michigan.
Should meet at a winery.
Sure. Good idea. Or brew pub.
Mm-hmm.
Rapa or Krupa?
Whatever.
Rapa is something else, isn't it?
Or somebody wants to open their house to a gathering of ex-seminarians. We could bring in Pete Garthy to I don't know if he has a big place.
Hi, Pete. Guess what? We're going to your cottage.
Yeah, we're going to your place. So anyway, we do need to think about though getting together personally, maybe later in the fall, if we don't have a bad winter, maybe even winter.
Just another kind of thought about the whole Latin and Greek thing. Last week, I've been following this program on PBS on Sunday nights, where this woman looks at historical events that took place.
Worthy, last name is Worthy.
Yeah, that could be it. That
Yeah,
could be it.
she did the one on witches last night.
Right, right. Yeah, I got that recorded to watch. But the interesting thing, two things, just from a historical standpoint, it looks like the experiences of people in England were quite a bit different from other nearby countries, like the Scandinavian countries, where the Lutheran Church pretty much dominated. The thing that struck me was when she was looking for death records related to the Black Plague a couple of
That's right.
weeks ago. The thing is, she looked at the tax documents for these different towns and setups, whereas my wife's family is from Finland, and the birth and death records were all kept by the local church.
Right.
The government, that was the church in Finland. And each church was responsible for maintaining the census figures and the records of births and deaths and so on. So I thought that was kind of an interesting, and we don't see that. I don't know that much about, I mean, I've got a degree in American history, but it just seems like the churches, maybe we're just because we're so splintered in this country, there wasn't any local church that was assumed that responsibility for maintaining all of the births and deaths and marriages and stuff like that. But one other thing, this might be for Dick Galant. One of the things that she was looking at was tax records that were written in what she described as medieval Latin, that was apparently a lot easier for people to understand the structure and what was being said in those documents, just because it was a more recent version of Latin. And it just never even occurred to me until I heard her say that the Latin that we learned was probably among the earliest versions of Latin. And we didn't really get into the medieval or later versions of Latin during our scholarly work. Does that sound about accurate, Dick?
Yes, can I comment on that?
Sure.
The year was around 880, which during the reign of Charlemagne. And Charlemagne gave the challenge to a monk called Elkwim, who was actually British. And what he did is that they developed the educational system of the Catholic Church, and they were like little schools, part of the cathedral. Okay. And so they want to teach them how to read and do numbers. And the reason that Charlemagne did that was that he wanted to get his taxes collected so that the farmers didn't cheat each other and knew how to pay their taxes. And the interesting thing that they did at that time is that in translating the Bible as you're talking about it, if you were to go and translate Latin like it was written, say, in the time of Cicero or something like that, it was all contiguous text. And so they kind of invented like periods and the like to to do sentences so that you could know how to read it. The interesting thing about all that is that that's probably how the church began to take records and everything, because then you have the history of the Holy Roman Empire and the arguing between the Pope and that. If you remember, Napoleon took the crown from the Pope and crowned himself and all that good stuff. that was years later, but still the whole idea came from Charlemagne in the, in the Western thing. And he couldn't write his name, interesting, even though he was the guy that was pushing it, which I found rather interesting. Now, the other thing is regarding the question I ask people is, who invented grammar? And the answer is the Greeks. And the reason they did grammar was because the farmers used to come in to sell their goods and everything in the forum. And they would get into arguments about where their land was, how far, where their land, the property lines were. And at the forum, or the agora, as it was called, they had a judge. And the judge had to make the decision on the land. But the thing is, the people were, the farmers really didn't know how to argue their case. And so they had a set of rules, which became the grammar on how to argue. And that's how you, and then you get into Socrates and all the other part of that. It kind of evolves on that. But as far as the importance of language in your life, and it's around you all the time. Even the genius of the our learning Homer, and how all those lines were all, somebody knew them by heart in their head. They didn't write them down because they used to have, like, what is it, Alan Adale, running around singing the songs, the balladeers. Well, they every line, I don't know how many thousands of lines there are in the Iliad and the Odyssey, but they have, it's a iambic pentameter, I believe. And then on the fifth note, or the fifth meter, the foot rather, it's known as a sponde. And the sponde was two longs, which was a signal that you were coming to the end of the line. And it was easier to remember that way to do the next line. And if you think about it, think about Gregorian chant. You remember that you would go da 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 da. If you remember Vespers in the Latin, so that was always a signal that you were coming to the end of the line, and then you go to the next one. But also remember that none of that stuff, getting back to Homer, was written. That was all done with some, out of the lore of the poet, so to speak. They invented the, like for music, they invented the meter, and how they, and you talk about dialects, you got Homeric Greek, which was different than with the Greek. We learned Attic Greek, we learned Homeric Greek, we learned two different, and then we learned Koine Greek, which you mentioned earlier. There was the Koine in Greek means coin, or you get the word coin, it means common. Just like you have the Vulgate, you talked about that a minute ago, the Vulgate Latin is the vulgar Latin. That was the Latin, the Latin we learned was Ciceronian, or what Caesar wrote in. Remember the ablative absolutes and all that good stuff? But the Vulgate isn't written that way. And that, that has learning those language had a huge effect on what, like what's taught in literature and everything else. Incredible.
I'll refresh my memory back to Greek for a second. We started Greek as sophomores in high school. Is that
Right.
that's right? And then we had 5 more years of Greek. Is that
4
Yeah.
years. Yeah,
No,
5
we had
years of Greek,
5.
6 years of Latin. If you
6
skipped
years of
the whole
Latin.
course. That,
5
and if you had, and if you took a foreign language, you had, 5, 6, 13 years of language training in 6 years. That's incredible.
Right.
3 different languages plus English.
Right. Now, who was it that taught us Greek?
Monsignor Shaw,
Was
Yeah.
it Shaw?
Wahmhoff.
Father
Weisenkopf?
Weisenkopf?
Weissenhoff, I think.
Oh, we only had him for Latin, but Monsignor Shaw taught, Father Tommy taught Greek too, I believe.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
early
for-
Greek.
yeah. And Monsignor Shaw did too, yes. Mhm.
Probably one of the reasons that most of that was dropped was that they didn't have any more teachers that could handle the Greek, because after us, a lot of them left.
That's true.
Yeah.
Excuse me, people, I'm going to have to sign out.
Paul, you're in
Yeah.
our prayers.
Good luck, Paul.
Yep.
Oh, good
Hang
luck.
in there, buddy.
Thank you.
I also took a semester or two of Polish with Father Guzikowski. He just opened it up for anybody who was interested.
Now, who was it? The instructor?
Guzikowski?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Ooze, we used to call him.
And I remember almost nothing of that. I could say dziękuję, but
Dziękuję.
another foreign language.
Yeah.
Now, overall, I look back at those just the learning the structure of Latin and Greek. Really, I think helped us with our mental organization, trying to see how everything kind of fit together, and adjectives and superlatives. What was some of the pluperfect language?
Mhm.
I can't even remember. Some of the things sort of stick in my memory, and others haven't. The only thing I can.
6 declensions, if you remember.
Oh, I think it was Weisenkopf who, if you got it wrong, he would say "scribe censias."
Yeah.
Write it 100 times. Was he the one that did that?
Yes.
Point like that, right?
Right.
You Murphy. You know.
Right.
Yeah, I had to do that. Yeah.
Oh, Lord. I still have a picture of me that I took in St. Henry's Hall, and in the back, I'm looking at a Greek dictionary. There's a setup photo of that I did, and here on my desk is me looking over a Greek dictionary. And my wife was really astounded when I was showing her that I asked her to proofread those e-news letters that I send out. And when I got done proofing the thing, I read it to her, and she was astounded that that I could at least read Greek. Now, one other little note about that, I started looking for other recordings of the Iliad, and there was a really Morgan Freeman did a recording of the Iliad, and when I listened to him, it was just dull. It was just like reading one word after the other, and then there wasn't any emotion to it at all. The thing that I can always remember is once we got to that part of the Iliad, and we would sort of say it with enthusiasm, and that was sort of a adding some life to the language. That I don't know. That was my sense that that was in, I think it was in fourth year high school that we got to Iliad. Does that sound familiar to people?
Third year.
Yeah, I remember it.
But then who taught us the 2 years in college? None of the people.
I still think
Weisenkopf.
Weisenkopf.
Well, he left.
He taught Latin to us. Frank, do you remember, did Monsignor Shaw teach the Greek then too? I'm trying to remember. We did,
I seem to remember that in the first year of college, he taught us Greek. I can't remember the last.
Weisengoff or Monsignor Stas?
Father Weisengoff was the 6th year. Thank you.
Wait a minute. Well, did we do Demosthenes and I'm trying to think of we did a dialect of one of the tragedies. I remember we did a little bit of that. And the Greeks, one of the things that the Greeks did, since they were, when they wrote tragedies, they were this is kind of interesting. When they were in a competition, right? So you would get up and you would read, do your plays and stuff, and you had an audience, and then you were given an award, like a Tony Award from the local people. So one of the things that they would do to get people to vote for them and get them interested in their plays is that they would tell a lot of bawdy jokes at the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
And then the seminary, I don't know, then they, but one of the things.
I think that those got ruled out here.
Right, so you're right, Mike. But the thing that was when you think about it, think about Jay Leno. What is the first thing that he used to do on his show? He'd get out there and Johnny Carson did the same thing, right? They'd tell jokes. And then they would, for about 10 minutes, and then they'd go to do their interviews and stuff. But the genius of getting you engaged and looking, to paying attention to what their stories were about, the Greeks already had the name for it or whatever.
Well, listen, guys, our next regularly scheduled group get together would be the first Monday in December. And I don't, as always, I don't have my calendar.
December, you say, Bill? December?
December, yeah, whatever the first Monday is.
5.
5?
5.
5.
5, the 5th.
Does that sound okay with guys?
Sure.
Okay, now what I'm gonna do is kind of, when I finish putting the conversation on our YouTube channel, I'm going to suggest that people look over, especially the last few minutes there where we were talking about how to improve the sessions and get some other people involved in there. And I'd like to, if there's some other guys who would like to serve as host, I guess let's kind of make it in the new year that we'll try to implement that. That would be like in February. So if anybody's got some ideas or would be interested in serving as a host of meetings in the future, come up with a suggested topic. I'm open to anything that makes these sessions worthwhile and not just the numbers.
I think that David had an excellent idea.
I endorse
if we could, that'd be a good starter to have maybe Father Stewart or someone just basically give their reflections on how the education we got in the seminary, how they use that in the priesthood, how it affected them, their mindset, everything else. I think that would be a super topic.
Yeah.
I think he'd be real receptive too. And if it went well, then I think some of the other guys that I mentioned would be more receptive after Terry's done it.
Yeah.
Do.
So, I've been in email conversations with Terry Stewart over last couple of years, especially since he was the, the conservator or whatever for Bishop Rose.
Mhm.
I'd be, willing to send a note to him unless anybody else thinks they might be able to present it more to him.
Why don't you go ahead and propose and see how he reacts?
Yeah,
Yeah. It's a couple
Maybe
months.
that, Bill, if you want one of us to maybe talk to him and, give him a briefing before they put it on,
Oh, yeah.
I'll offer him some background and stuff so that,
Did you say you will?
I'd be willing to do it once you get the contact and see if he wants to do it to help him out.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, we'll end it on that note. It was the whole thing about the Greek and Latin I was especially interested in. Oh, I know. In that context, one of the things that struck me when I was doing the research on the attitudes toward the synod on synodality, there were several really, I would say, arch-conservative Catholic groups that say, oh no, this is not what the Bible says or said. This is what it actually meant. And I got to thinking the context in there. Well, I mean, somebody had to have been knowledgeable about Greek, supposedly among these different groups to come up with those kinds of interpretations. That's what kind of got me on this thinking of in the church today, how many people could be classified as Greek biblical scholars. I have no idea, but it seems like that's a big challenge if some of the arch conservative groups are coming up with their interpretations of what was written or what was intended in the early versions of the Bible. Just seems like you don't hear about very many, I would say, kind of liberal or progressive Greek scholars in the church today. Just a thought. I don't know if that's makes any sense to anybody. All right, so we'll call it an evening and we'll try to set up on the final one of the year. My gosh, it's hard to think along those lines. We're at the end of another calendar year.
Tempus fugit.
Don't return it.
Caveat emptor.
Farewell, gentlemen.
Hey, everyone.
All righty.
take care.
Good talking to you guys.
All right,
Take care, everyone.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Adios.